either party. In fact, if you had to pick one, what would you say? What would y'all say? Do you think that that the Democrats would be a better alliance? Do you think the Republicans would be a better alliance? Do you think that neither party, both parties? What do you think? And this is an interesting question to me today because Dr. Claude Anderson has actually written about this. He actually, in question number 64 in his book called The Black History Reader, which is at powernomics.com. Everybody should read Dr. Anderson's books. Question 64 literally is, should blacks ally with liberals or conservatives? So I said, oh, okay. Well, since we're in the middle of political season, let's see what Dr. Anderson has to say. Maybe he can provide some insights. Now, I want to start the conversation by just doing that reminder disclaimer that I always do, where I want to ask you all, can we agree that I am not here to tell you who to vote for? I am not here to tell you whether you need to vote. Give me a yes if you agree with me and understand that I am not in the business of telling black folks to vote Democrat. I'm not here to tell you to vote Republican. I'm not here to tell you to be independent. I'm not here to tell you to not vote. I'm not here to tell you to do anything. I believe in something that it seems that a lot of people have a problem with, which is freedom. I believe that you should be free to do whatever you want to do. And anybody who has a problem with that, anybody who has an issue with me encouraging black people to do what's best for themselves, should probably, in my view, question their own incentives. Why would you not want black people to do what's best for themselves and best for their own families, unless you either A, want to manipulate them for your own purposes, or B, believe that they are just too stupid to make their own decision? And I'm going to argue that B is definitely in full effect. A and B apply. There are people, in my view, who use our community for their own purposes. I do believe that, and also, I believe that there are people who really do believe that we're just not smart enough to understand the gravity and the power of freedom. In fact, did y'all know this? That when they freed the slaves, there were people who were worried, who said, these were liberals now. There were liberals who said, well, why would we free them? Because they wouldn't know how to be free. They don't know how to live without our help. They need our help. We're like their parents. They're too dumb to know how to make their own decisions. So because they're borderline animals. So why would we let these people be free? We'd be hurting them. In fact, we're helping them by keeping them under our guidance, under our tutelage, and under our control. This is a real thing. So really, I'm going to say that I think A and B are in full effect, that there are people who just believe that we're just not smart enough to make our own decisions. And I vehemently disagree with that, obviously. And or B, they want to use us. I think that there are people who use us. They've done this consistently. There are Democrats who use us. There are Republicans who use us. It sort of happens across party lines. If you let somebody use you, they're going to use you. Politicians are the ultimate pimps. In fact, they really, really, really need to be on the street corner because they are damn good at what they do. And I'm just going to tell you, if you are not awake, then they will be happy to rock you back to sleep. So anyway, give me 1 second here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from Dr. Anderson's book, and I want to remind everybody that if you want a copy of my book, which is The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, or any of my other books, or autographed copies, if you want copies of my wife's books or our financial flashcards for kids or workbooks, everything's on sale, 60% off today. Today only, if you go to drboycebooks.com and use the code word morning123, it's all one word, morning, morning, morning123. Somebody type morning123 in the chat, all one word, and it's drboycebooks.com. You can get 60% off. And I think there are actually a few more All Black National Convention passes on the platform. So you can actually get a discounted pass. Feel free to, take advantage of the opportunity. All right. So so tonight's question that we're going to cover in Dr. Claude Anderson's book is should black people form alliances with Democrat or Republican parties? Okay, and what I noticed, a lot of you said no, and yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't think these alliances are healthy. But what I want to do is I want to read and just kind of let you reflect on the arguments that Dr. Claude Anderson is making in his book, because this is not just a matter of us going by what we feel. I want to encourage you to think. I want us to really stop and process things, as opposed to just having knee-jerk reactions or doing something because it's popular or doing something just because because it feels rebellious. I want you to really just come to your own conclusion. And at that point, I'm not going to tell you what your conclusion should be. I'm just going to be the one who is going to encourage you to go in the direction that your instinct tells you to go. So I'm not telling you what to think. I just want to encourage you to think, because if you don't, and then these people will use you up and chew you up and spit you out and screw you and everything else. And I think that's what's happening. I mean, Lord Jesus, I don't know if I was more frustrated watching the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention. Both of them kind of got on my nerves because I actually care about progress. And I haven't seen much progress in our community from either of the political parties. But anyway, let me digress from that and hop into this topic here. All right. So here's what Dr. Anderson says about alliances that Black people should or should not form with Democrats or Republicans. This is page 184 of the book, The Black History Reader. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. So Dr. Anderson says, in truth, it makes little difference with which ideological group Blacks identify, because there is scant difference between liberals and conservatives. Neither is willing to drastically alter the socioeconomic structure to benefit Black Americans. You know, have you ever heard this saying? Let me know if you've heard this statement where they say it's the economy, stupid. Has anybody ever heard that old phrase, it's the economy, stupid? Give me a yes if you've heard that before. What does that mean when they say it's the economy, stupid? What do you think that means? Tell me what you think. Answer in the chat. Well, what it means is that when you're talking about politics, the economy is what matters. People care about being able to put food on the table. People care about being able to get the job that they're looking for, start that business, build that wealth, buy that home. That's what people care about. So if it's the economy, if the economy matters, I want to ask y'all this question. Why is it that it matters in general, but when we talk about things like the Black economy and Black wealth, and the fact that Black wealth is so much lower than white wealth, that somehow people like us are defined as radical for bringing that up. I don't think it's radical at all. I think that it's called common sense. It's human nature. So what he's basically saying is that because neither party is really willing to do what is required to alter the socioeconomic status of Black people, it's like a tick attack. It's this tomato. All right. So let's see here. It says, consequently, if Blacks choose either side, they will still wind up in the same spot, at the bottom of the ranking order of acceptability, powerless and impoverished. Conservative racial tactics are open, direct, and demonstrate their determination to conserve white privileges, political advantages, and nearly 100% ownership of all wealth and resources. Conservatives do not intend to share the unearned prosperity that their ancestors gained by migrating to America, prosperity that came from the Black enslavement and Jim Crow segregation. Conservatives are well aware of the purpose of the racial norms established in the Diversity Acts of the 1700s, that whites would be the dominant and controlling population. Conservatives do not believe in sharing or surrendering power or resources. Conservatism comes from the root word to conserve, which means to hold on to what one has. And I'm going to make an argument to say that even those of y'all that are running around yelling at Black people because they won't all line up and do what you tell them to do when it comes to voting for Kamala or whatever, you're conservative also. You have a different type of conservatism. And what do I mean by that? Well, the word conserve basically means maintaining the status quo. So if you're telling me that I got to go vote for who you voted for just because that's what everybody's doing and that's what your grandma did and that's what your mama did and that's what your daddy did, that's conservatism. That's another type of conservatism. Do you understand what I'm saying? That you're basically saying that changing things is not possible or it's not appropriate, and that you want me to simply do what you did. Let me know if you get what I'm saying. Give me a yes if you follow the logic here. That's my argument. My argument is that you're dealing with conservatives on both sides of the aisle. You're dealing with conservatives on both sides of the aisle. The only difference is that the white conservative in the Republican Party tends to be conservative in certain areas as it relates to maybe his economics and protecting that wealth and the power, the white privilege power for sure. Whereas the liberal conservative is somebody who simply says, keep doing what you've been doing, the same strategy that hasn't been working, the same people that haven't done anything for your communities. These are the same people that we want you to keep in power. So we're here to conserve the power structure. Just this morning, I brought in Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is the vice president running with Dr. Cornel West. And Dr. Abdullah, we had a long conversation, well over an hour. You should go check it out. And basically, she was explaining how hard the Democrats work to conserve their power when it comes to the political process. They don't want things to change. They don't want the wealth to be redistributed in a significant way. Sure, they'll throw some resources to poor people and things like that. That maybe they're so that's and then mostly though, in addition to that, they'll offer you an abortion if you want one or whatever, right? That's I mean that, and I'm not making that up. That's literally what outside of the DNC, I think they actually had a little makeshift clinic where black women were going in there getting their black babies terminated. Which honestly, I admit that I'm biased against that because I was a big candidate for that procedure. My mother was 16 years old when she got pregnant with me, and they told her that you'd be better off not to have this baby because you don't have any money, and money drives everything. Apparently, there's no value in human life. Apparently, my life didn't matter. It was the fact that she didn't. If she'd had an extra $3,000 in the bank, then they wouldn't have said that to her. Do you understand? So by the so really my life only came into existence because I had a mother who basically said, "No, my child's life matters to me more than this amount of money that you think that I don't have." Right? I'm here talking to you right now because my mother, in a long time ago, understood that Black Lives Matter. She understood that this baby inside her body was supposed to live, and again, I'm not here to tell anybody what they should and shouldn't do. I know it's a complicated process. I'm not judging you. Please don't let me make you feel bad. But I'm going to just tell you that that when we get to the point, pay attention now. I'm saying this as a finance professor. When you get to the point where you're deciding the difference between life and death of a child over how much money the mother has in her bank account, that is when money has become your God. That is where money has become your God because I don't think anybody has ever marketed that procedure to masses of wealthy white women. I don't think they'd look at somebody with $100,000 in the bank and say, "Oh, you can't afford to have this baby." They'd say, "No, you can afford to have a child." Now they might say it's your decision at that point, right? But if you're poor and you're struggling, and let's say the father's not around, like my father wasn't there. My father was gone. I think he was gone like very early. I didn't even know the man. Then that can become an economic conversation, which is interesting because here I'm a finance guy, but that conversation is very disturbing to me. I'm not, but again, I don't feel like I have the right to judge you. I'm not judging you. I promise you I'm not. But what I'm saying is I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of us concluding that a child should or should not be here because of money. And just to tell you a personal story, there was a lady that I knew, and I didn't even know her that well. And she was gonna have her fourth or fifth child or something, and she had a husband, and she told me she was gonna get the procedure and terminate the child, and I didn't even know this lady that much. She probably I don't know, but I said, and I wasn't trying to judge. I just said, so why are you doing that again? And she said, well, because we can't afford the health insurance. Health insurance is expensive here in Mississippi. And I said, and so you're telling me that if you could afford health insurance, you would go ahead and go through with it. She said, yeah, I would. And I literally at that moment, I kid you not, because sometimes God talks to me. I'm not no pastor. I don't ask me to come to church because I'm not coming. But God talked to me. God said, if the difference between this child living and dying is a few $100s, boys, you better go ahead and write that check. So I did. I said, well, if I pay your health insurance, would that help? Would that make a difference? And she said, well, yeah. So she went and talked to her. I said, but talk to your husband about it. I don't want him to think I'm trying to hit on his wife. I'm just doing what I think is right because I don't think a human being should live or die based on a few $100s. And so lo and behold, this child lived. She made the decision not to terminate because of that conversation. I didn't have to send the money. Her husband, fortunately, he had enough pride where he said, I'm not letting another man pay, for my wife's health insurance. He did, and I get it. I understood. I said, yeah, okay, no problem, man. I'm not a threat. I'm not trying to hit on your wife, but I just felt in my soul, this something ain't right about this. Something feels weird about, wait, a few $100s is and here's the deal. And I won't ever say her name because I don't think it's important. But through the years, I saw this child. I saw when the baby was born. You know how you see people on Facebook and you don't really talk to them, but you see them. I saw when the baby was born. I saw when the baby turned one, when the baby turned three, when the baby went to kindergarten, when the baby went to elementary school. Now the baby's like 11 or 12 years old. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, this poor kid who's growing his own life, who's his own human being. He's his own person now. He's got a whole personality. He's looking forward to his life. And I'm thinking, he doesn't even know that the difference between life and death was like a few $100s. Oh my God. So when I talk to y'all about things like financial consciousness, that's what I'm thinking about. Like this idea that we make life or death decisions over a few $100s. I'm not telling you what decision to make. I promise you, do you understand? I need y'all to really don't write me off as some activist in this. I'm not trying to interfere with your decisions. I'm just trying to say sometimes we make these massive decisions over tiny little things. It reminds me of like when a 17-year-old takes his own life because his girlfriend broke up with him and he doesn't realize that in about 6 months he's going to be thinking about another girl anyway. So it's like, why would you have a permanent solution to such a temporary problem? My mother being a poor black woman in Louisville, Kentucky was a temporary problem, but never letting me live was a very permanent solution. You never know. Maybe I could have been the only child she could have ever had. Me and my mother have had 53 years of an amazing life together. I paid off her house. And to just know that a couple $100s or a temporary situation could have changed things so drastically bothers me. And one of the appeals I'm going to make to intelligent black people is to say, I need you to just make sure you at least look at the big picture. When you make decisions, decide what you want to do, but let's start looking at the big picture instead of the small one. I talked to my buddy D1 today. D1 is a great rapper, and he's first off, let me tell y'all, he's gonna come in next week. D1, we got to clap for him because actually he just released his new album. I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Loaded. And it's literally right now on Spotify, the number 2 album on earth behind Eminem, by the way. So just let's clap it up for him. And I'm super proud of him, super happy for him, and he deserves it. So he and I talked for a little while. And what we were talking about is the difference between making decisions based on short-term criteria versus making decisions based on long-term criteria. And that is a mindset. And that is really an investor's mindset. If you look at people that made money from things like gentrification, they were thinking long term. They started planning for gentrification in the 1970s, 1980s. They didn't start on Tuesday and then expect to make money by Friday. Do you understand? So what we were talking about is in terms of politics. One thing that's really interesting to me is it's not so much that I have people telling me, oh, you got to go vote for Kamala or the Republicans are going to destroy the country and Project 2025 and all. I don't have a problem with people believing that. I don't have a problem with people going to the DNC. I don't have a problem with any of that. What I have an issue with is short-term decision making versus long-term decision making. What's weird to me is that I can point to you and show you that that every election there's always some sort of threat that is created that is designed to scare you into the voting booth every single time. Go look at it. Y'all remember when Diddy had shirts on that said "Vote or Die"? Like if you don't vote, you're going to die. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't vote and I ain't dead yet. I didn't die. Or when they told you that a Trump presidency was going to be the end of the world and that they were going to enslave black people and Trump supporters are going to show up in our neighborhoods and kill us all with machine guns. I saw 4 years of Trump. I survived it. I saw 4 years of Biden. I survived it. So what's interesting to me is if you are not a conscious person, if you can't see, remember, consciousness is leveling up. Consciousness is where it's like going from driving a car to being in an airplane. Consciousness is where you can see far and you can see wide. A low vibration is where all you see is what's right in front of you. Well, a conscious person says, okay, I'm going to look at the bigger picture. I'm going to think about what's happening right now for sure. But I'm also going to think about, well, what does America look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? A conscious person is a person who says, yeah, I got to go get a job maybe right now to go pay some bills. But they're also thinking, well, but you know what? If I start this business and I sacrifice now, I can have money 20 years from now. See, an unconscious person is going to say, I'm going to eat these potato chips because they taste so damn good. A conscious person is going to say, yeah, I like potato chips like everybody else, but I don't want to die from a heart attack and obesity when, 15 years from now. Do you understand? So a conscious person doesn't optimize solely based on what's in front of them or solely based on the situation that's right there. A conscious person does not say, oh, she looks good. I'm going to go I gotta go hit that. No, a conscious person says, yeah, ooh, I want to hit. She's gorgeous. I want to lay down with her too, but she might have diseases. She might be my baby's mama one day. I don't want my kids to get raised by a stripper, and I don't really want to deal with these problems. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my time and do something a little bit different. Do you understand? See, and here's the thing. I'm gonna argue this. I really believe that the goal of anybody that's seeking to manipulate people, period, particularly black people, are people that rely on your lack of consciousness. Not so much a lack of intelligence. There are very intelligent people who are not very conscious. It's more so consciousness, in my view, can be connected more so to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence says, yeah, I'm feeling this way. Maybe I'm a little bit afraid right now of what the consequences could be. Gosh, if I don't vote, Trump could get into office and things could be very bad. But at the same time, maybe if I do something different, if I vote for a third party, or if I don't participate, but let them know that I'll vote when you tell me, when you give me a reason to vote, that may change this two-party system one day, that maybe in 10 years, we won't be stuck in this sort of political slavery that's been dropped on us by the Democrat Republican Party. See, here's the thing. You're in the middle of a civil war. You're in the middle of a civil war. Fortunately, it's not violent yet. It could get violent. I saw a lot of violence during the Black Lives Matter protests. I saw violence on January 6th, right? It could get violent, right? You saw Trump get shot at. You've seen people on the right get violent as well, right? So you're in the middle of a civil war. And the interesting thing about the Civil War is that unconscious people are the ones who see the Civil War and they pick a side. They spend their time being mad at the people on the other side of the Civil War. But then the conscious people are the ones who can rise above the Civil War, look at both sides fighting, and actually have their bone to pick is not with the left, it's not with the right, it's with the bastards who created such a fucked up system, excuse my French, that you have to choose between the lesser of two evils. Those are the people I have the issue with. I don't have the issue with my Republican friends because I understand why you're a Republican. Maybe you can't support something like abortion. I know a lot of Christians who say I'm not crossing that line. I understand I don't have an issue with my liberal friends. I understand. Trump is kind of an SOB. I understand why you don't like the guy that much. And I can understand why Kamala, honestly, she is presidential. She looks more presidential than Trump, to be honest with you. I'm not voting for her, but she does. So I get all that. But what I don't like is how we have to pick these sides. And then what happens in the Civil War, you got to be careful about, is that civil wars cause people who should be friends to have to become enemies. It causes people who normally would be allies to become competitors. You know, like I told you about the unfortunate weird phone call I got from D.L. Hughley, and where he's talking crazy to me and everything else, which was very strange to me. I did not say a word. I just sat there and said, what the hell's wrong with you? And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I'm a black man, you're a black man. I'm sure we have something to talk about other than this bullshit politics that you want to talk about. I'm sure that there's something in common that we have where we could form an alliance and work together rather than sit here and fight over a political party that doesn't give a damn about either one of us. They probably wanted both of us to be aborted before we were born. They wanted both of us to be in prison. They wanted both of us to be dead. They wanted both of us to be uneducated. They wanted both of us to be unemployed, marginalized, disrespected, disregarded, and thrown out to trash like a lot of other black men in this country. So I'm trying to figure out for the life of me why I got black men and black women who are literally trying to fight me over Democrat Republican stuff when there's so many other things we should be fighting for. I just don't understand that. And the only thing I can see is that perhaps we just haven't sat back and really looked at ourselves and just looked at, like, what are you really fighting over? What's really going on? Now, let me go ahead and start reading some of this to you. And let me text the guy who's delivering my food. And uh I'm gonna see if he can bring it to my room. If he can't bring it to my room, I'll just tell it to bring it to the front desk because he brought the food really fast. I'm in a hotel right now. I can't say what city I'm in because everybody be trying to be nosy and stuff. Anyway, so let me read what Dr. Anderson says here. All right, so let's see. All right, so what Dr. Anderson says is that neither party is willing to drastically alter the socioeconomic structure to benefit Black Americans. Consequently, if blacks choose either side, they will still wind up in the same spot, at the bottom of the ranking order of acceptability, powerless and impoverished. So then Dr. Anderson also says conservative racial tactics are open, direct, and demonstrate their determination to conserve white privilege. We talked about that. Conservatives do not intend to share the unearned prosperity their ancestors gained. We talked about that. Conservatives are well aware of the purpose of the racial norms established in the Diversity Acts of the 1700s, that whites would be the dominant and controlling population. Conservatives do not believe in sharing or surrendering power or resources. When Black Americans have never had more than 1/2 of 1% of anything of value in the richest nation on earth and suffer from a disproportionate share of social pathologies, what do Black conservatives think that they are conserving? Food stamps, public housing, welfare, or criminalization? Conservatives will sink a Black boat while liberals will attempt to comfort Blacks as the boat sinks to the bottom. You understand? So he says the conservatives will sink your boat. The liberals will pat you on the head like a little puppy while your boat is sinking. They'll make you feel better. They'll tell you Black Lives Matter and how much they love you, and watch your boat sink to the bottom. Tell me if you get what I'm saying. Give me a yes if you agree with that statement. So in fact, somebody compared liberals and conservatives by saying that liberals are like the uncle, the really nice uncle that keeps promising you he's going to take you to Disney World, but he never does. And the conservative uncle is the one who never tells you he's taking you to Disney World, but he goes every single year and tells you that he's leaving you at home. He doesn't even promise you that he's taking you. But either way, you ain't going to Disney World. So let me keep going here. Liberals espouse diversity and multiculturalism without understanding. Uh-oh, that's my food. Hold on, right back. I didn't know my food was coming that fast. That's crazy. That's awesome. I love it when food gets here quick. And there was a brother too, so I got to make sure I give him a tip. You know, I don't know if y'all pay the black. Do y'all pay the black tax when you tip Black people extra? So yeah, I gotta give the brother a tip. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I can't find it. I can't find the right point in the app. Anyway, let me quit messing around. Let me focus in. Focus, boys. And my ADHD kicks in sometimes. All right. So here he says liberals espouse diversity and multiculturalism without understanding how these terms came about or how they were used against Black Americans. Inside of broad terms like minority, diversity, and multicultural, Blacks are either downgraded or totally excluded. Even those leading the Black civil rights movement did not seem to understand the political correctness of diversity caused liberals and the public in general to turn a blind eye on the unaddressed needs of Black Americans. By the way, I did leave him. In case you're wondering about the tip, I saw some of you were asking about that. I already gave him a 19% tip, but since he was Black, I was going to give him like extra. So let me see. Actually, let me rate the order. Okay, since y'all pushing me on it, let me go ahead and take care of the brother. So I'm gonna give him a thumbs up, and I'm gonna edit his tip. I was gonna leave him $11.09. Now he's gonna get $15.84. Y'all happy now? Y'all happy? Or y'all gonna give me more shit? All right. So anyway, let me get back to it. All right. So in a society that no longer chooses to deal with race, wait, let me go back here. Hold on. Even those leading the Black civil rights movement did not seem to understand that the political correctness of diversity caused liberals and the general public to turn a blind eye to the unaddressed needs of Black Americans. So they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were helping Black people by with all this diversity talk, but we kind of got drowned out in that discussion, right? They got to the point where they would start using these broad, ambiguous terms like multicultural and stuff like that, and then somehow Black people end up at the bottom of the barrel. I don't know if y'all saw this or not, but this year MIT, last year they had 13% Black Black freshmen in the student body. I think this year they went down to 5%. So literally the number of Black students in their freshman class dropped precipitously, mainly because of the Supreme Court issues and stuff like that. So let me keep going here. So moving on. He says, in a society that no longer chooses to deal with race, diversity forces Blacks to compete with all of these fabricated minorities that liberals have added to the pot in a kumbaya effort to share the wealth with everybody. Liberals impede Black socioeconomic progress by using euphemisms and equating Black suffering to discrimination experienced by other self-perceived aggrieved groups. Once these groups are created, they are offered to both the private and public sectors as a menu from which to select for affirmative action and other preferential treatment programs. Since the American ranking order of social acceptability puts Blacks in the lowest position, government agencies and private businesses will usually choose women or ethnic immigrants over Blacks. And I've mentioned that to you before. I know some of y'all love Kamala Harris, and I don't dislike the lady at all. But remember that if you look at most of the leading Black people in America, most of them are not African Americans that are descendants of slavery. They don't want to touch that. They don't want anything to do with people like that. Typically, if Kamala was an African American woman with slavery in her DNA, American slavery, not Jamaican, none of that. Talking about American slavery in her family history, and married to a Black man with American slavery in their history, not a Jewish man, Kamala Harris would not be running for president. She would not be your candidate for president. They would say, you know what, she's too dangerous. And in fact, I'm even shocked that Michelle Obama is able to still maintain the popularity that she has. I think Michelle Obama needs to talk about reparations. I believe to the core of my soul that Michelle Obama understands, and I think that that's why she couldn't, I think that's why she hated being in the White House so much, because she felt the way I think a lot of us would feel. I really believe if Michelle Obama did the right thing, she would lead the conversation on reparations, because she's the person that can do it. She's the one that's inside the House that I think has the leverage to pull it off. Unfortunately, she doesn't pick up topics that are that heavy. I wish that she would. I wish she would. But anyway, let me keep going. So moving on. Let's see here. So it says here on page 185 of the Black History Reader, this is Dr. Claude Anderson's book, powernomics.com. That's his website. Liberals impede Black socioeconomic progress by using euphemisms and equating Black suffering to discrimination experienced by other self-perceived aggrieved groups. Once these groups are created, they are offered to both the private and public sectors as a menu. Okay, I mentioned that. Since American ranking order of social acceptability puts Blacks in the lowest position, government agencies and private businesses will usually choose women and ethnic immigrants over Blacks. So you typically get picked over. This is what's been going on. When I was at Syracuse University and I asked them, how many African Americans do you have on the faculty? They could not answer, but they did say, this is how many Black people we have. This is how many immigrants we have. This is how much diversity we have. We're very diverse. I said, you're not very diverse because you don't have any African Americans who are descendants of slaves. You have a bunch of people from other countries, and somehow you put them in the same boat as us. And then they started doing that with gay people too, and that's something that I would argue is incredibly problematic and something that should not be accepted. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people talk about Project 2025. I don't blame you. That's fine. Maybe one day it'll get passed. There's a lot of work to do to get that thing passed. But what's interesting to me is what people don't talk about is Project 2034. Project 2034 is, to me, more sinister, or as sinister as Project 2025. What is Project 2034? Well, Project 2034 is that when they allow millions and millions of people to come across the border here illegally, and they start naturalizing these people, they give them the right to vote. They in Illinois. I got to look it up, but people keep saying that they can actually become police officers now, which is really interesting. I didn't know you could come into the country illegally and become a cop. But we know that they're giving them billions of dollars, right? They're giving them free rent, free everything, lots of resources that they never gave you, moving them into Black neighborhoods. Thanks to J. Mal Green. J. Mal Green in Chicago is an activist on the ground who represents us. He's B1. I had him on here this week. He will confirm to you that this is what they're doing. They're taking these schools in Chicago that they shut down. They shut down a bunch of the Black schools in Chicago. They got rid of a lot of the Black male principals. And then what they did was they told, when Black people came to the city and said, we'd like to use this building for this or for this or for that. We need a community center. We need the business center. They said, no. We can't afford that. We can't afford that. Now, suddenly, all these buildings are being used up for people that just got here last week. And this is what's going on in Chicago. This is what's happening in New York. This is what's happening all throughout the country. So Project 2034 is that in 10 years, you got to understand, in 10 years, the Black vote is going to be pretty worthless. It's going to be watered down to a point where they're going to say, who cares what Black people think? Screw these people. They see where the wind is blowing. These are people that are very conscious of the direction of the demographic. They see the black community getting a little bit wiser about its politics. They see the black community starting to speak up on certain issues that we used to remain quiet about. And eventually, I would say in 10 years, Project 2034 is when your vote will mean very little in terms of shaping American politics. So at that point, when you don't have a vote that matters anymore, what are you going to do then? What are you going to do? Wealth is your only option. That wealth is your only opportunity. We've got to master this economic thing. We've got to do this because we do have resources that we are able to apply. We have got to do this. If we don't get our wealth together, this country is going to kick us in the ass. It's going to absolutely positively kick you, because then you don't have money and you ain't got votes. Well, they can pretty much do whatever they want with you. You can sit there as angry as you want, and it won't even matter. But anyway, let me keep reading here. So he says here on page 185 of the Black History Reader, Dr. Claude Anderson says, when the menu of preferred groups in the national policy of benign neglect, this is where they just ignore your problems and act like they don't happen, were first introduced in the mid 1970s to take the focus off of blacks, both conservatives and liberals were amazed that black leadership did not push back or take to the streets in protest. The federal government issued a registry that reclassified Hispanics and women as minorities and added American Indians, Eskimos, Asians, Arabs, Pacific Islanders, Sephardic Jews, and poor whites as minorities eligible to compete with blacks in affirmative action programs. None of these groups needed the Emancipation Proclamation or the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to constitute into the Constitution in order to be accepted into mainstream society. If they had needed them, they would have pursued them. Liberals and conservatives worked as a team in a manner that inflicted pain on Black Americans and compounded the injustices they had endured. By the late 1970s, liberals gave up their focus on blacks, deciding that aligning with blacks was probably a losing cause, but that the newly fabricated minority classes could cloak themselves in the historical negative treatment endured by blacks and pretend that they, not Black Americans, were the victims of racism. There is no constitution, legal, or moral basis to equate the experiences of these new minorities to the unique oppression of blacks or to queue them up in the same benefits line. Both liberals and conservatives show their indifference to Black Americans by accepting diversity and political correctness concepts that displace blacks. History shows that neither conservatives nor liberals can be depended upon to protect the rights of blacks or to take action to see that blacks are placed in a protected class based upon their exceptionality and unique historical oppression. Blacks must not only do their own political thinking, but also place their own group's self-interest first and foremost. There you have it. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson says. I think this is worth considering, right? Whoever you're voting for, you can do whatever you want. Don't let me tell you what to do. I do think this should be considered, and I think also it's very interesting that being pro-black is really seen as being radical and dangerous. I can't tell you how many times I've had Facebook pages taken down. My Instagram, I had almost 700,000 people following me on Instagram. That got taken down. I had another Facebook page with 600,000 or 700,000 people on it that was taken down. So effectively, it's fascinating to me that I would be defined as dangerous. Like, what's dangerous about me? I'm not out here beating people up. I'm not out here killing people. I'm not, chasing people down with shotguns or threatening to hurt people. I'm just speaking a fact that is very pro-black. If I was pro-gay, I don't think I'd have this problem. If I was pro immigrant, I don't think I'd have this problem. If I was pro-white woman, I don't think I'd have this problem. If I was a raging white feminist, I'd be a hero. If I was pro Kamala or pro Trump, I don't think I'd have this problem as much. Now I noticed the conservatives kind of got it pretty bad for a little while, but generally speaking, this is what you're dealing with, right? Now, if you want to know where my new Instagram page is, it's Dr. Boyce Finance. I have a backup page, Dr. Boyce Money. So feel free to follow both pages because one of them at some point is going to be taken down. I already know it. We plan for these things, by the way. I don't cry when they shoot back. I know that if you're effective, then they're gonna have an issue with that, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that. But I do want to point that out just to say that this is what we're up against. Being pro-black is really not very popular. There are black people who look at you funny when you're pro-black. They're like, well, why would you do that? And I think in their mind, they think that it's because you're kind of playing for the losing team. They're like, oh no, you can't bring the coffee that black. You can't be that black. You have to kind of, you kind of got to kind of lighten it up. You got to kind of add that little mulatto mix in there to kind of soften it up a little bit so that it's more acceptable. So Kamala, if she's shown up with a Wesley Snipes looking black husband that was African American and pro black, again, she would be seen as radical. But instead, she shows up with the nice little mix. Like, hey, here's my white husband who is down with APAC. That shows that we're safe. These are our signals to show that, hey, yeah, we got just enough blackness to get the right to get the vote, but we're not so black that we're going to disrupt anything. So ultimately, what I would say is that when you're talking about politics, I don't have a lot of faith in the Democrats or Republicans or anybody to really change the condition of Black Americans. I think that it comes down to very simple ideas. It comes down to you and us committing to basic things that we can do. Like I talked to Dr. Abdullah today, and she has a background, that's really, really good. I mean, I encourage you to go check out her interview. But we're not the same, right? We're not exactly the same, but we respect each other. And I learned from her today. I wanted to hear her point of view. And one area that we talked about was revolution and just kind of what revolution kind of looks like. And she talks about dismantling institutions that exist, right? Because there's some institutions we have to deal with no matter what. And I do agree with that to a point, but I do think that certain institutions are institutions we think we have to deal with, but we really don't. Like, for example, she mentioned that her child goes to school, so she's got to deal with the school system. And I'm gonna just tell you, as an educator, you don't need a school system to educate your child. You don't. You really don't. I mean, you need somebody to give a damn enough about their kid to spend time with him. That's what you need. The child just needs a guardian. They need a mentor. They need a parent. That's what they need. But the reason they don't have a parent is because you off at work. So you're allowing one institution to control your child because you're off serving another institution. Do you understand? So they got you both institutionalized, and then you both end up losing. So the smartest people in our community, I'm gonna tell you, the smartest people in our community are the people from groups like the Nation of Islam and the Hebrew Israelites, they're not perfect, but they do get certain things because they understand. Like, you don't have to send your child to that public school. You just got to make sure mama or daddy or the community is available to give them an appropriate education when they're not at school, right? You can't have the child not learning anything, but you don't necessarily need them in a space where they're going to be abused, mistreated, and miseducated. If you and this is where financial security clicks in, right? If we're talking about wealth, like, again, this is a longer term project. This is not something that gets fixed overnight. But if you let's say that our goal, remember I told you guys about Project 2070. Project 2070 is where I believe that B1 people can be the most economically intelligent group of people on the planet. Also, part of Project 2070 means developing enough infrastructure. You got damn near 50 years to put this in place. You have enough infrastructure so that financial security is just a fundamental tenet in every black family. Every black family's got a couple 100,000, in today's dollars, a couple 100,000 liquid in stocks and real estate and everything else. So they don't have to go to work. See, what you got to understand is that if you have a couple $100,000 liquid, you don't have to work for anybody. You don't. As long as you're not a greedy fool that's throwing your money away, you really don't have to go to work. So what does that mean, though? You free up the parent then to do what a parent is supposed to do. You free up the parent to where they're not the employee, the parent becomes the teacher. And the parent also is the intellectual and spiritual security guard for the child. Do you understand? The parent is able to say, okay, you know what? I don't have to go to work, so I'm spending the whole day with my kids. I'm taking them out fishing. I'm going to take them to show them how to work on the farm. I'm going to take them on a trip to Africa next month. We are getting online. We're doing our lessons on the internet. We're going through our iPhones and we're learning lessons through AI and everything else. You have all the knowledge right there in your house. You just have to have somebody that has the time to apply the knowledge. And even if you do have to go to work, I think that if you had structured and organized community-based homeschooling networks all throughout this country, we could educate every single one of our kids and not have to ask a white man for nothing. And I'm not trying to say this to be anti-nobody. I'm trying to say that they are jacking up our kids by the millions. They are screwing them up, putting poison in their brains, not preparing them for the world. They are not competitive. They're getting their ass kicked, and we standing here watching it, waiting for some damn Democrat to come and fix a problem that you should be fixing yourself. We should be fixing us. If my child comes out of that public school and they can't read, write, do math, or compete, That's on me. That's my responsibility. That's my responsibility. So that's it. Now somebody says I don't return emails. You're right, I don't. I don't have time for email. I'm sorry. I get 1,000 emails a day. I do have a team though. So if you email, if you reach out to our support at theblackbusinessschool.com, I have team members that will look at the message. But just so y'all know, I hate to say it, but there's so many people that reach out to me to get me personally involved in stuff. I can't do everything. I can't. It takes a lot of energy just to do stuff like this every day. We do Money in the Morning every single morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you want to join us, text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948, and I will be there right there with you every single day. You can even bring your kids to that. Think about it. I'm a college professor. I've taught college students for 30 years. I could teach your kid too. If your child comes and hangs out and listens to me every morning, just talking about economics in a conversational framework, you don't think that after just maybe 10 or 20 of those conversations, that kid is going to be light years ahead of every other kid in the neighborhood? Do you understand how powerful that is? Think about this. I didn't even meet a black college professor until I was 20 years old. I'd never seen a black college professor until I was 20. So if you got a 5-year old that's hearing from a college professor at the age of 5, they're going to be light years ahead of the competition. They're going to be ahead of the whites, the Jews. They're going to be ahead of everybody. So my belief is you got two major institutions that hem black people up for the most part, and then you got others that we have to confront, right? The two biggest institutions that can be easily erased are the educational system and the economic system. Those can easily be replicated by superior institutions that are built outside of the mainstream. Right. You just have to maybe accept some of the challenges that come with building your own. But if you accept those challenges, you'll find that it's a much more fulfilling life. And they're connected. The economics and the education are connected because if the family is economically stable, then that means you freed up the time of the individuals in the family who really are supposed to be the leaders and the teachers. The reason you outsource education is because you ain't got time to do it yourself. But if you suddenly had money in the bank and were able to pay your bills without having to go to a job every day, then you would then be free to do what you're supposed to do, teach your kids. I believe God intended for the mother and the father to be the first teacher of the child. I do believe that. I also believe that things like developing a family, which is the most important, most powerful institution on this planet, that the development and the maintenance of a family requires a level of training and preparation that we do not give young people. We do not train the young men to be husbands. We do not train the young ladies to be wives. We do not train the young children to be parents. And then we wonder why they fuck it up. Well, the reason they fuck it up is because you didn't prepare them. You didn't. I'm sorry. I really believe that all the kids have to go through some sort of preparation. They can't build a proper shelter spiritually, economically, or otherwise because nobody taught them how to do it. Think about it. Imagine if somebody threw us out in the woods. I've never been trained to survive in the woods. And somebody said, I want you to go out in the woods for 60 days and survive and create shelter and food for yourself. I wouldn't know what to do. I would die. So that's what we do, in my view, when we waste time having our kids go into these schools, learning a bunch of crap that isn't going to matter in their life, isn't going to help them at all. Just wasting time. I don't know what the hell kids do in Chicago public schools. I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. They are wasting time. And when I tell you guys, I've told you that how finance is connected to time. Money is time. Time is money. They're connected mathematically. I can show you mathematical equations we did when, in our research papers that connect money and time. So one of the things that you do is you don't just waste your money, you really waste your time. And when you're wasting your time, you're taking a major loss because of that. So it's one of the reasons that financial security is such an important aspect of Black liberation is because once you're financially secure, you're freed up to use your time for the things that are going to benefit you and protect your children. Now, there are other systems that have to be dealt with. The criminal justice system, of course, right? How police treat us, the prison system, stuff like that. Those are systems that cannot be denied and neglected. Those are a little bit harder to override. But at the same time, I think economics and education, I think those two we don't have to outsource those things. In fact, Rockefeller, when he gave all that money to the school system, part of the reason he did that was because he said, I need your mama, I need you and the mama to come to work for me, to make money for me. And then we're going to just send your kids to this school so they can babysit your kids so that we can take your time and have you apply it to the factory. 150 years ago, parents did not do that. 150 years ago, you didn't have a bunch of women screaming that they would rather go to work than have babies and raise their own kids. That just wasn't a normal thing. That sounded weird 100 years ago, but it sounds very common right now. That's, I talked to a young lady not long ago who pretty much sacrificed her whole, like all of her childbearing years for her career, and I wasn't judging. I didn't say a single word, but I remember wondering. I wonder if she's gonna feel good about that trade-off because it's unfortunate because I don't she was good at her job and she makes good money. But I remember thinking, gosh, the job doesn't care anything about her. So I wonder how she's going to feel about this when she's 75 years old and has no children and nobody around. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is this. All I know is that if you keep your consciousness low, these people will manipulate you, they will play you. And whatever decision you make, I encourage you to think it through and make sure you're making the decision that works for you. Also, I would also encourage you to not be afraid to do things that are different. You have to be different. You have to do things that are different. You got to be, relentlessly radical when it comes to achieving at least your own liberation, because it's really only after you liberate yourself that you can liberate others. If you don't have the courage to liberate yourself, then how the hell are you going to liberate other people? So let's liberate each other. We can do this. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go eat my food actually. So I'm not gonna keep us for too long today. Next week, I see with Dr. Anderson, his question 65 is Black exceptionalism the unused key to Black empowerment? So we're gonna cover that. He's also got some sections on abolitionist John Brown. So we're gonna cover this next week as well. If you want to be notified when we do the book club meeting, text the word greatness to 87948. Text greatness to 87948, and I'll send you an invitation to the book club. That's on Wednesday nights. And then every single morning, we do Money in the Morning financial consciousness training. We do this 7 days a week because I'm serious about us elevating our economic thinking. So God bless you guys. I hope you have a great day. And my book is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. And you can get an autographed copy of my books as well as our financial flashcards for kids and financial workbooks. If you go to drboycebooks.com, that's drboycebooks.com, use the code word morning123, all one word, morning123, and you can get 60% off anything in the store for today.